Our final topic involving layers deals with, from the layer property manager, of turning layers on and off, freezing and thawing layers, and then locking and unlocking layers. And so we're going to look at those three options and talk about when we might use each one of those specifically with the work that we're doing. And so here I've just pulled up my completed drawing of P3-28. You should already have this problem done. You were to do it after watching the first, the using layers number 1 video. And so just go ahead and pull this one up, and we're going to take a look at these different options of turning layers on and off, freezing and thawing, and locking and unlocking. And so the first one, and really you can get to these same options just from this pull down menu here under your layers panel. And so for instance, if we just take a look at the first one, on and off, the little light bulb, if we find our object layer and left click on the light bulb for that object layer, it'll turn that layer off. Now since right now my object layer was set current, it's warning me that if I turn this layer off, that anything that I draw, I won't be able to see it on my screen. And this happens from time to time, that we turn our current layer off and then we're drawing and nothing's showing up, so we're wondering what's going on. So let's go ahead and click on turn the current layer off if you get that warning, and you'll see that everything that was assigned to my object layer was turned off. You can use this to verify which parts of your drawing are on the object layer. Like maybe you started drawing on the 0 layer and then later found out you were on the object layer and you think you had everything assigned to the object layer, but you're not sure. So you can turn it off and see what disappears. Also, like right now, if I go ahead and draw lines, you'll see it looks like I'm drawing lines, but then the line disappears. And I can continue drawing lines. And then when I cancel out of my line command, nothing shows up. But if I come back up and if I turn on my layer again, you'll notice that those lines show up. And so since my layer was set, my current layer was turned off, that's why those lines weren't showing up. Okay, the next one over is the freeze and thaw. There's really very little difference between using on and off or freeze and thaw. Really the big difference is freeze and thaw doesn't use as much system requirements. So if you're using a big drawing, it's better to use freeze and thaw than on or off. So we'll just get in the habit of using freeze and thaw. So again, if I freeze my object layer, so just left click on what looks like a little sun icon, left click on that, it's going to tell me you can't freeze your current layer. So instead I'm going to come up here and I'm going to freeze my hidden layer instead. So go to hidden and freeze it. Click anywhere in the drawing and you'll see that all of my hidden lines have been turned off. They've been frozen, and so they've been removed from the drawing. One thing I want to point out is if you freeze a layer or if you turn a layer off, you need to be careful, because now if I go to move these objects, so just start the move command and I select all my objects and then hit enter to say I'm done selecting my objects, and I pick a point to move my objects from, and I'm just going to move them 24 units to the right, so type in 24 and hit enter. So now I moved everything. The thing to be aware of is now when I go to thaw my hidden layer, that those hidden lines didn't get moved with my object. So these are independent of my object. And so just be a little careful using on and off and freeze and thaw. Just be aware that if you move something, that they don't get moved with it. And a lot of times that's why we want to freeze something, or that's why we want to turn something off, is so that we can isolate just those few drawing elements. Okay, so I'm going to move my part back now. Now I've got my part back, and then the last object here is I've got the object to lock a layer. So I'm going to lock my center layer this time. So just left click on the padlock and that locks the layer. And now I'm unable to do anything with that layer. So if I select my center lines, you'll see that I got them selected, but if I just hit the delete key on my keyboard, AutoCAD gives me the message down here that it tried to erase 2 items, but they were on a locked layer, so it can't. And I can go ahead and try to delete my 2 center lines here in my front view. And so I select them, I hit enter, and again it's going to say I can't delete them because they're on a locked layer. So if you lock a layer, that means that that layer cannot be modified. And there's instances when you'll want to do that or not. So these are just a little introduction into using on, off, freeze, thaw, and then lock and unlock. One of the places that I use layers a lot is when I do construction lines. And so I'm just okay, so I'm going to go in here and create a construction layer. So just come up to your layer property manager and click on that little icon. Come in here, we're going to create a new layer. Just call it construction. And then come in here and just choose any weird color that you like, any color that looks good, and hit OK. And then I'm going to come in here and now I'm going to check my work between my top view and my right view. So I'm going to use that object snap tracking that we learned about. And the first thing is to draw in that 45-degree line. So get your 2 corners lined up, click a point there, and then come on up and do the same thing for the other side. And then of course you'll want to go ahead and check yours to make sure that it's a 45-degree angle. So measure that angle. And it is, so we're all set to go. And then what I would do is anything like this where I'm checking my work is just go ahead and assign it to be on that construction layer. So I'll go ahead and pre-select that object and assign it to the construction layer, then hit escape, and go ahead and change my layer to my construction layer to make it my current layer. And now I can go through and verify that everything that I drew was correct and make sure that everything lines up like it's supposed to. Okay, and then you can go ahead and go through on yours, on the one that you're working on, and verify that everything lines up correctly and get it assigned to that construction layer. And why I like to use the construction layer is because then when I'm done, I can come up here to construction and I can go ahead and freeze it, as long as I remember that it cannot be the current layer that I'm freezing. So I'll go ahead and change to my object layer, and then I can freeze my construction layer. And so all my work is still here, but it's not being shown and it's not going to be printed. And so that's one of the good reasons to use either on, off, or freeze or thaw. Lock and unlock, it really works with drawings that are much busier, where you want to just lock something so that it won't move, or you want to lock something so that it doesn't change. And so this ends the 3 videos about layers. So hopefully you've learned a lot, and there's a lot of stuff in here that you've been able to put into practice as you work on your drawings for these courses.